So to continue my series on British Prime Ministers, we've got up to number 43, well over halfway now. Sir Anthony Eden. Sir Anthony Eden was Prime Minister for quite a short time, between 1955 and 1957, and history has treated him in quite a harsh way. Um, but I'm just going to read here from the Downing Street webpage, as I do with all these videos. A bit of biography. He was born in 1897 in Windleston Hall in County Durham, not far from where I live actually, just down the road from where I live in Sunderland. Um, when he got to number 10, he was, I believe, 60 years old or 58. Um, this is the biography. Prime Minister Sir Anthony Eden is best known for his controversial handling of the Suez Crisis in 1956 during the second year of his premiership. Sir Robert Anthony Eden, 1st Earl of Avon, was born on the 12th of June 1897 and was educated at Eton and Christ Church, University of Oxford. Sir Anthony Eden carved out a career in the Foreign Service, serving as Foreign Secretary 3 times during important periods in the Second World War and the Cold War. And it doesn't say so in this article, but he's actually acknowledged, uh, conversely, as opposed to his reputation as Prime Minister, he's seen as one of our best, one of our greatest ever Foreign Secretaries. So he really was highly respected all round. Um, he was acknowledged by many as Sir Winston Churchill's successor and took over as Prime Minister in April 1955. This was after Churchill's second term. At the age of 57, he immediately called a general election. That's to his credit, because not everyone who took over does that. Um, and on the 5th of May 1955, increased the Conservative majority from 17 to 60. That gives you an indication of the sort of trust the public had put in him. However, less than a year into his premiership, his opinion poll approval ratings had fallen from 70% to around 40%, and his failings as Prime Minister were increasingly the talk of Whitehall and the press. Tired, stressed, and overworked, and in desperate need of a holiday, he became increasingly ill after a series of abdominal operations in 1953. As Prime Minister, he left areas he had very little experience in, such as domestic and economic policy, to his deputy Rab Butler, preferring instead to focus on foreign affairs. The Cold War was at its peak, and the preoccupation of maintaining the country's great power status was at a time when the British economy could no longer afford such commitments. This led Britain, under Eden's leadership, to miss out important developments in Western Europe, such as the 1955 Mazzina talks on closer economic integration. His controversial handling of the Suez Crisis in 1956 ultimately proved to be his downfall. After the nationalisation of the Suez Canal by the Egyptian nationalist Colonel Abdel Nasser, Sir Anthony Eden, fearing a new Arab alliance would cut off all supplies to Europe, conspired with France and Israel in order to retake the canal. Following a badly performed invasion, widespread international condemnation from the United Nations, the Soviet Union, the Commonwealth, and the threat of sanctions from the United States. So interestingly, at this time, the United States and Canada, I believe, was against the British-French position. On so many other occasions, it's been Britain and the United States together. So Anthony Eden was forced into a humiliating retreat. In his mind, the Sunday Times Washington correspondent Henry Brandon observes Sir Eden's whole proud career has been scarred by a decision which misfired for lack of American cooperation. He attempted to cover up the conspiracy, lied to Parliament, and ordered the civil servants to burn the damaging evidence. Isolated, he resigned on the 9th of January 1957, having shown the world that Britain was no longer the great power it had once been. The Suez Crisis, according to one of his official biographers, B.R. Thorpe, was a truly tragic end to his premiership, and one that came to assume a disproportionate importance in any assessment of his career. Sir Anthony Eden was created Earl of Avon in 1961 and died in January 1977 at the age of, he was 79 when he died. He died in Alphen in Salisbury. Um, so Anthony Eden is very much a tragic political figure in British history. Like I say, a greatly renowned Foreign Secretary, but generally ranked as one of our worst performing Prime Ministers ever. his defenders have quite vociferously defended him, and there has been some biographies that have been more sympathetic to Eden. But generally speaking, I think regardless of reassessments, he's always going to rank in the lower tier of prime ministers. Um, it's very difficult, I think, to sort of entirely slander any one's entire political career, especially given the service that he'd shown the country before. Nevertheless, he misjudged geopolitics at the time, and I think Eden's very much come to symbolise the basic fall of British superpower status. We were a superpower up until World War II, but it's almost the Eden Premiership single-handedly symbolises the downfall of the British Empire. Formally, it didn't end, of course, until 1997 with the handover of Hong Kong, but under Tony Blair. But Sir Anthony Eden is pretty much epitomised as a personification of the fall of British power. It was, of course, Macmillan who made the famous Winds of Change speech, and where Macmillan, I think, tied in was sort of understanding where Eden had misjudged the situation. I'm not sure who the French president was at the time, maybe Vincent Auriol. I'm not quite sure about that just before de Gaulle. And I wonder, did he have the same sort of backlash in his reputation? So that's Sir Anthony Eden. On a more light-hearted note, he's associated with a hat. The Eden hat was a popular style of hat around the 1950s. Um, his tomb can be seen in Alfriston in Salisbury, Wiltshire, St Mary's Churchyard. Um, Regarding his character, this is from the Wikipedia article. Anthony Eden always made a particularly cultured appearance, well-mannered, good and looking. This gave him huge popular support throughout his political life, but some contemporaries felt that he was merely a superficial person lacking any deeper convictions. That view was enforced by a very pragmatic approach to politics. Sir Oswald Mosley, for instance, said that he never understood why Eden was so strongly pushed by the Tory party when he felt Eden's abilities were much more inferior to those of Harold Macmillan and Oliver Stanley. And there were other people at the time that were seen as more heavyweight contenders to Churchill. Successors to Churchill. But that's Sir Anthony Eden. Make of him what you will. Um,